Okay, so you tell me what you think about this. So, Hitler's cover story was that he wanted to make the glorious Third Reich and elevate the Germans to the highest possible status for the longest possible period of time. Okay, but that wasn't the outcome. The outcome was that Hitler shot himself through the head after he married his wife, who died from poison the same day, in a bunker underneath Berlin while Europe was in flames. Well, he was insisting that the Germans deserved exactly what they got because they weren't the noble people he thought they were. And then you might say, well, Hitler's plans collapsed in flames, and wasn't that a catastrophe? Or you could say that was exactly what he was aiming for from the beginning, because he was brutally resentful and miserable right from the time he was, a rejected artist at the age of 16. And so he was working, or something was working within him, and something that might well be regarded as demonic, whose end goal was precisely what it attained, which was the devastation of hundreds of millions of people, and Europe left in a smoking ruin. And the cover story was the Grand Third Reich. And so there's no reason at all to assume that we're not in exactly the same situation right now.
I think there's a great reason to assume. I think that Hitler's motives and everything that he was trying to do wasn't a secret. I don't think that anybody had to guess that he was incredibly anti-Semitic, that his Aryan supremacy was going to lead to the destruction and the murder of so many different people in concentration camps. None of this was a secret. It's not like he was hiding it.
He hid a lot of it.
He tried to maybe hide the death camps, but nobody in Germany was wondering, wow, crazy the pogroms are happening against Jewish people. That's so crazy. Or wow, they're all being shipped to just mainly the Jews to camps to work. That's kind of interesting. Or wow, he talks about this a lot in Mein Kampf, but maybe it's just a coincidence. I don't think you can compare Hitler to people that are worried about climate change. The worry that I have here is because if we're applying this,
people in Germany thought Hitler was perfectly motivated by the highest of benevolent.
If I were to take this standard of evidence and apply this lens of analysis, couldn't I say the exact same thing about the conservative constellation of belief? They don't want to intervene anywhere in the world because they don't care about the problems there. They're anti-immigration because they hate brown people. Trump wanted to ban Muslims from coming to the United States because he's xenophobic. Conservatives don't want to have taxes to help the poor because they want homeless people to starve and die in the winter. I feel like
some of that's true. And yes, you can adopt that criticism. I think the difference with regards especially to the libertarian side of the conservative enterprise, but also to some degree to the conservative enterprise, is they're not building a central gigantic organization to put forward this particular utopian claim. And so even if the conservatives are as morally addled as the leftists, and to some degree that might be true, they're not organized with the same gigantism in mind. And so they're not as dangerous at the moment. Now, they could well be, and they have been in the past, but at the moment they're not. And so, of course, you can be skeptical about people's motivations when they're brandishing the moral flag.
Why would we say that they're not as concerned about the gigantism? I feel like everybody is when it's a particular thing that they care about.
You mean whether they would be inclined in that direction?
For sure. That conservatives wield the power of the government whenever they feel they need to, just as liberals do, right? Conservatives were very happy to see, for instance, abortion was brought back as a state-regulated thing.
That's a good objection. I think that you're correct in your assumption that once people identify a core area of concern, they're going to be motivated to seek power to implement that concern.
I think cancel culture is a good idea too. I think conservatives prior to the 2000s, if they could censor everything related to either LGBT stuff or weird musical stuff or stuff that they didn't want their kids to watch, conservatives would do it. But now that you see that liberals and progressives are kind of wielding that corporate hammer, now conservatives are very much, well, hold on, we need freedom of speech, we need to platform everybody. And now progressives are like, well, hold on, maybe we shouldn't platform people.
I've got no disagreement with those things that you said, and I have no disagreement about your proposition that people will seek power to impose their central doctrine. Okay, so then you might say, and so we can have a very serious conversation about that. What do we have that ameliorates that tendency?
In the United States, we've got hopefully a form of decentralized government. I can't speak to Canada as much, but
yes, that's true. So that's one of the institutional protections against that, because what that does is put various forms of power striving in conflict with one another, right? And so that's a very intelligent solution. But then there are psychological and philosophical solutions as well. And one of them might be that you abjure the use of power, right, as a principle. And so, and this is one of the things that was done very badly during the COVID era, let's say, because the rule should be something like, you don't get to impose your solution on people using compulsion and force. There's a doctrine there, which is any policy that requires compulsion and force is to be looked upon with extreme skepticism. Now, it's tricky because now and then you have to deal with psychopaths, and they tend not to respond to anything but force. And so there's an exception there that always has to be made, and it's a very tricky exception. But look, let me tell you a story, and you tell me what you think about this, because I think it's very relevant to the concern that you just expressed. And I don't believe that the conservatives are necessarily any less tempted by the calling of power than the leftists. That's going to vary from situation to situation. Though I would say probably overall in the 20th century, the leftists have the worst record in terms of sheer numbers of people killed. So
I mean, it depends on how we're quantifying
not
that.
really. Okay,
yeah,
we'll just quantify
sure.
Mao. How's that? Direct death of 100 million people. So, that's a pretty stark fact. And if we're going to argue about that, well, then we're really not going to get anywhere. So, and
I'm not disagreeing that the Holodomor happened as well. The Soviet Union and
yes,
China were horrible.
20 to 50 million
I'm not going to
say those were horrible things. Yeah, of course. And so war of...
I'm just saying, for World War II, it depends on how much you attribute the war deaths to Nazi Germany, et cetera, et cetera. But sure, largely speaking, I don't think that the left beat the right because the right wasn't trying. I don't think it's because Hitler's lack of trying led him to kill less people than who ended up dying during the Great Leap Forward or during the industrialization of the Soviet
Yes, well, I also think it's an open question still to what degree Hitler's policies were right-wing versus left-wing, and no one's done the analysis properly yet to determine that.
Well, what do we
because
consider?
It was a national socialist movement for a reason. And the socialist part of it wasn't accidental.
Well, but there was no, cooperatively formed businesses that were owned by all of the people for the people and distributed to the people. And I don't think redistribution was high on Hitler's list of things to do.
That's true. It was a strange mix of totalitarian policy.
I don't think it was a strange mix. I think it was a bid to appeal to mid-left and center-left, the KPD and the German Socialist Party by calling themselves National Socialists. I think it was very much like an authoritarian, ultra-nationalist regime that pretty squarely fits with... people get mad if you call something far right or far left because they have
one of the things I would have done if I would have been able to hang on to my professorship at the University of Toronto would have been to extract out a random sample of Nazi policies and strip them of markers of their origin and present them to a set of people with conservative or leftist beliefs and see who agreed with them more. And that analysis has never been done as far as I know. So we actually don't know. And we could know if the social scientists would do their bloody job, which they don't, generally speaking. That's something we could know. We could probably use the AI systems we have now, the large language models, to determine to what degree left and right beliefs intermingled in the rise of National Socialism. So that's all technically possible. So, and it hasn't been done, so it's a matter of opinion.